It was an ordinary day on Earth. People were going about their lives, working, studying, watching the news. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until, without warning, every screen on the planet flickered. The interruption was sudden and shocking, causing everyone to pause in confusion. Television sets, smartphones, and computer screens, all across the world, glowed with the same strange static. Then, the feed cleared, revealing a chilling image that would haunt humanity forever. A young human child appeared on the screen. The child, no more than 10 years old, stood in front of a cold, imposing backdrop. His eyes were wide with fear, but there was also a strange, defiant spark in them. The crowd behind him was silent, waiting. The child looked directly at the camera, and as the feed zoomed in, humanity witnessed something they could never forget. The screen shifted to show soldiers in dark uniforms, the insignia of the Galactic Empire displayed on their chests. They aimed their weapons at the child, who stood motionless. The feed caught the briefest glimpse of his terrified expression before the cold, emotionless voice of the Empire's officer echoed across the broadcast, "This is the last of humanity's rebellion. The child's death is a warning to all." The soldiers fired. The child crumpled to the ground, lifeless, as the broadcast cut to static once again. The entire world watched in stunned silence, unable to process what had just occurred. But then, the feed cleared once more. A final message flashed across the screen, written in bold, red letters, "Run." The message echoed in the minds of every person on Earth. Run. But from what? Who would dare threaten the entire planet in such a direct and terrifying way? The answer came swiftly: the Galactic Empire, an advanced and ruthless alien force that had long watched over humanity from the dark corners of the galaxy, had now decided to make its move. For decades, humanity had lived in relative peace, growing in its technological advancements and spreading its influence across neighboring planets. Earth had managed to stay off the radar of galactic powers, maintaining its status as a small but proud member of the interstellar community. But no one had expected the Empire to target Earth in such a brutal and public way. Panic spread across the globe. The world's leaders scrambled to respond, but there was little they could do. The Galactic Empire was too powerful, its forces overwhelming. Despite their most advanced defense systems, AI-controlled shields, robotic soldiers, and fleets of warships, Earth stood no chance against the Empire's superior technology. The child's death was not just an act of war, it was a message: we are coming, and you cannot stop us. As the news spread, fear took hold. People whispered in fear, speculating about the child's identity. Was he a symbol of resistance? Was he the last hope for humanity? No one knew for sure, but the impact of his death was undeniable. Every corner of Earth was on edge. Children cried for their parents. Parents hugged their children tighter than ever before, fearing that they might be the next target. The governments of Earth were not prepared for such a threat. Despite their technological advancements, they were still years behind the Empire in terms of military power. The vast fleets of warships that filled the Empire's ranks were armed with weapons that could obliterate entire planets in the blink of an eye. Earth had no weapons capable of standing up to such an invasion. But hidden away in the depths of Earth's military underground, there was a secret weapon, Project Aegis. This project had been developed as a last-ditch effort to protect Earth from extraterrestrial threats. The weapon was shrouded in mystery, and its true power was known only to a select few. Some believed it was capable of turning the tide of any war, while others feared that it might only be a desperate hope with little chance of success. Project Aegis was Earth's final chance, but even its creators weren't entirely sure it would work. The project had never been fully tested, and its only goal was to neutralize alien technology, something the Empire's vast fleets were heavily reliant on. If Project Aegis could disable the Empire's weapons or their shields, it would give Earth a fighting chance. But if it failed, Earth would have no defense left. In the meantime, chaos erupted. Earth's defense networks were activated, and the global military was put on high alert. Every country braced for impact, but no one knew when the attack would come, or how long they had before the Empire's massive fleet arrived. The only certainty was that Earth had mere days to prepare. As the sun set over the planet, cities across the world went into lockdown. Soldiers stationed in every corner of Earth fortified their positions. Civilians took shelter in underground bunkers, praying that they would survive the coming storm. But the weight of uncertainty hung over the planet. How could humanity stand against such a powerful force? At the same time, Earth's best and brightest military minds were working tirelessly to uncover every possible avenue of defense. Captain Elena Carter, commander of Earth's Erebus battleship, was tasked with leading the charge. The Erebus was Earth's most advanced warship, designed with stealth and speed in mind. It had been a symbol of Earth's growing technological might, but it had never seen combat. Elena was a woman of action, and she was determined not to let the death of that child be in vain. She knew that Earth had only one shot at survival, and if they failed to take action quickly, the Empire would erase them without hesitation. The first move was critical, and Elena knew that time was running out. As she gathered her crew and prepared for the mission ahead, the question remained, would Earth's secret weapon be enough to stop the Empire? Would Project Aegis be able to prevent Earth's destruction? The clock was ticking, and humanity's fate rested in the hands of its most courageous soldiers and its most powerful weapon. The message was clear, run. But could humanity fight back instead? The world held its breath as the first signs of the Empire's arrival began to show. Earth had never faced a threat like this before. The news had just finished broadcasting the terrifying message left by the Galactic Empire, and now, the reality was sinking in. The Empire's fleet was on its way. The world's leaders scrambled to make sense of the situation, but nothing could prepare them for what was coming. The Empire's fleet emerged from hyperspace with chilling precision. Thousands of ships, each one a floating fortress, appeared in the sky above Earth like a dark cloud descending upon the planet. These ships were unlike anything humanity had ever seen, massive, sleek, and deadly. Their designs were beyond human understanding, their technology far out of reach for Earth's brightest minds. But it wasn't just the size of the fleet that terrified the planet, it was the manner in which the Empire moved. The Empire's ships were cloaked, invisible to the naked eye. The only indication of their presence was the eerie silence of the sky, as Earth's radar and sensors couldn't detect the massive vessels approaching. The cloaking technology was flawless, and it was clear that the Empire had planned their invasion carefully. They were in control, and Earth's defenses were powerless against their stealth. In the first moments of the invasion, the Empire began to disable Earth's satellites. One by one, they fell from the sky, as AI-controlled drones, sleek and silent, swept through the upper atmosphere. These drones didn't just destroy the satellites, they took control of them, using Earth's own systems to dismantle its defenses. Communications were lost, global networks were scrambled, and Earth's military could only watch in helpless horror as their most advanced technology was turned against them. As the world plunged into chaos, Captain Elena Carter of the Erebus was already preparing for action. The Erebus was humanity's last hope, a stealth battleship equipped with cloaking technology that could give them a fighting chance against the Empire's overwhelming forces. Elena had spent years preparing for a situation like this, and now, with the first wave of the Empire's attack, she knew the time had come to act. Elena was a seasoned military leader, known for her quick thinking and unshakable resolve. She knew that the key to survival was staying hidden and striking before the Empire could completely take control. With the Erebus cloaked and ready, Elena gathered her crew for a daring mission. Their goal was to attack the Empire's scouting ships, which were sent ahead to gather intelligence on Earth. If they could destroy these ships, they might delay the Empire's full assault long enough to give Earth a chance to organize a defense. The crew of the Erebus was a mix of veterans and new recruits, each one chosen for their skill and courage. Among them was Lieutenant Ava Hayes, a brilliant strategist who had been with Elena from the beginning, and Sergeant James Rafe Dawson, a former Special Forces officer whose expertise in stealth operations was invaluable. Together, they made up the core team of the Erebus, a team that had trained for years to fight an enemy they had never encountered before. Elena issued the command to launch, and the Erebus slowly slipped out of its dock, cloaked and unseen. The ship's engines hummed quietly, and the crew worked in near silence, knowing that every second counted. The crew was tense, but there was also a quiet determination in the air. They knew they had one chance to make a difference, and if they failed, the entire planet would suffer. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, the situation was quickly spiraling out of control. The global governments had come together in an emergency summit, but the cracks in their unity were already starting to show. Leaders from different nations argued over the best course of action. Some pushed for immediate retaliation, others argued for a diplomatic approach, and some simply wanted to flee to the underground bunkers. The fear of the unknown had brought out the worst in people, and every decision seemed to make things worse. Citizens across the world were scared. Panic spread like wildfire. In major cities, stores were emptied of food and supplies, and streets filled with people fleeing from their homes in fear. In the chaos, some tried to organize resistance movements, while others tried to convince their governments to act swiftly. But the more they demanded answers, the more their leaders seemed lost. It was clear that no one knew how to stop the Empire. In the midst of this confusion, there was one man who stood firm. General Bonner, a decorated war hero, had seen the horrors of alien invasions before. Years ago, his family was killed in a surprise attack by a different alien race, and he had vowed that humanity would never again be caught off guard. He was the one pushing forward the Aegis Plan, the secret project that had been humanity's last hope. Bonner had been working on Project Aegis in secret for years. The plan was simple but risky: develop a weapon capable of taking down the most advanced alien technology. It was humanity's last shot, and Bonner knew it. He fought tirelessly to push the governments to support the plan, but it was difficult. There was no time to waste, and the longer they hesitated, the more the Empire's ships advanced toward Earth. As the Erebus moved closer to the Empire's scouting ships, the tension was palpable. Elena and her crew knew they were entering enemy territory, but the Empire's stealth was still a mystery. Every move they made had to be calculated. The slightest mistake could cost them everything. As they approached their targets, Elena issued a quiet command to engage, and the crew of the Erebus sprang into action. The stealth battleship moved with precision, cloaked and nearly invisible. The Empire's drones patrolled the area, unaware of the threat approaching them. Rafe, the Special Forces expert, led the charge, coordinating the attack on the first of the enemy vessels. The drones were quick, but so were Earth's soldiers. With one well-placed shot, the first scouting ship exploded and the battle for Earth had begun, and humanity's first counterattacks were a desperate attempt to stave off the Empire's overwhelming assault. With Earth's defenses in disarray, the world's military forces scrambled to organize a defense, but it became clear very quickly that Earth was severely outmatched. The Empire's ships, cloaked and deadly, tore through Earth's defenses with terrifying efficiency. The technology the Empire wielded was far beyond anything Earth had ever encountered. Their weapons were devastating, their AI-driven systems flawless, and their ships nearly invincible. Earth's counterattacks, though brave and determined, were easily repelled. Missiles fired from Earth's warships exploded harmlessly against the Empire's shields, and ground forces that tried to engage the enemy in open battle were decimated by superior firepower. The Empire's drones, swift and deadly, swept through the sky, raining down destruction on Earth's cities. The fight was becoming hopeless, and the full scale of the Empire's power was starting to sink in. However, humanity's resolve was not so easily broken. Captain Elena Carter, though fully aware of the Empire's superiority, refused to back down. She knew that Earth's chances of survival depended on a few daring, high-risk moves. With her Erebus stealth battleship still cloaked and hidden from the enemy's detection systems, Elena formulated a plan to strike a decisive blow against the Empire's technological advantage. Elena's mission was risky but essential, to disable an Imperial ship using Earth's newly developed EMP bombs. These bombs had been designed as a countermeasure to the advanced AI systems that powered the Empire's ships. If they could detonate one of these bombs near a key Imperial ship, it could disable its AI systems, giving Earth's forces a fighting chance to counterattack. But the mission would be anything but easy. The Erebus moved in quietly, cloaked and unseen by the enemy's radar. Elena and her crew knew that the EMP bomb would only have a chance of success if they could get close enough to the enemy ship without being detected. It was a daring plan, and failure meant certain death for the crew. Elena's heart raced as she guided the Erebus into position, and the crew held their breath, waiting for the signal to launch. As the Erebus closed in on the enemy vessel, Elena gave the order to deploy the EMP bomb. The bomb was launched with precision, hurtling through space toward the Imperial ship. In that moment, the crew watched anxiously, knowing that this single act could turn the tide of the battle. The EMP bomb detonated with a blinding flash, sending shockwaves through the Imperial ship's systems. For a brief moment, the Empire's ship faltered, its AI systems temporarily disabled. The Erebus's crew exchanged looks of cautious optimism. They had struck a blow, but it was unclear if it would be enough to halt the Empire's advance. Elena quickly ordered the Erebus to move into a safe distance, but it was clear that the battle was far from over. The Empire's forces would recover quickly, and they would be coming after Earth with even more fury. Back on Earth, the situation was growing worse by the minute. As the Empire's forces continued to crush Earth's military, civilians were left to fight back in any way they could. With cities burning and their homes destroyed, ordinary people turned into soldiers, wielding makeshift weapons and using hidden tech to launch desperate ground assaults. People built barricades from scrap metal, crafted improvised explosive devices, and used every weapon at their disposal to slow the Empire's advance. The world's military had failed to stop the invasion, so now it was up to the people to fight for their survival. Street battles erupted across Earth's major cities. Humans, driven by a mix of fear and desperation, waged guerrilla warfare against the Empire's drones and soldiers. Their fight was chaotic and unorganized, but there was one thing the Empire could not take away: humanity's will to survive. In the midst of these ground assaults, General Bonner, the war hero and key figure behind Project Aegis, was leading a group of soldiers on a mission to save a group of civilians trapped behind enemy lines. Bonner had always been a symbol of strength, a man who had dedicated his life to protecting Earth. But as the battle raged on, Bonner knew that he had to do more than just command. He had to lead by example, and that meant making the ultimate sacrifice. As his soldiers fought fiercely to hold their ground, Bonner saw the opportunity to save a group of civilians who were being overrun by Imperial forces. Without hesitation, he led a daring charge toward the enemy. His soldiers tried to stop him, urging him to stay back and remain safe, but Bonner would not listen. The civilians needed him, and he would not abandon them. With his heart heavy with the weight of his decision, Bonner fought through the enemy lines, cutting down Imperial soldiers and drones with brutal precision. He reached the civilians and began to escort them to safety, but in the process, Bonner was cornered by a group of enemy soldiers. Realizing that the only way to ensure the civilians' escape was to sacrifice himself, Bonner made a split-second decision. He ordered his soldiers to take the civilians and flee while he stayed behind to hold off the enemy. In a final act of heroism, Bonner detonated a grenade, taking down a group of Imperial soldiers with him in an explosion that rocked the battlefield. His sacrifice allowed the civilians to escape, but at the cost of his own life. His soldiers, as well as the audience watching, were deeply affected by his bravery. Bonner's death was not just a tragic loss, it was a symbol of the unbreakable spirit of humanity. His sacrifice gave the remaining soldiers hope. They fought harder, driven by the memory of his courage. Bonner's death would be the spark that fueled the fire of resistance across Earth, reminding humanity that even in the face of overwhelming odds, there was always a chance to fight back. As Earth continued its battle against the Empire, Bonner's sacrifice became a rallying cry. His death served as a reminder that humanity had the strength to endure, even in the darkest of times. The fight was far from over, but Bonner's legacy lived on in the hearts of every soldier, every civilian, and every person who refused to give up. The stakes had never been higher. Earth, battered and broken, was facing its most desperate hour. The Galactic Empire's relentless assault had decimated much of Earth's military forces, and the few remaining strongholds were barely holding on. It seemed that humanity's last hope was about to be extinguished. But amidst the chaos and despair, a plan was hatched. Earth's final assault would be a bold, coordinated strike on the Empire's most formidable weapon, the flagship Oblivion. The Oblivion was the heart of the Empire's fleet, a massive ship brimming with advanced AI systems and unimaginable firepower. If Earth's forces could destroy the Oblivion, they might have a fighting chance to halt the Empire's advance. The battle for Earth's survival now rested on this one critical mission. Captain Elena Carter, with her unwavering resolve, was tasked with leading the strike. She knew the risks, and she knew that the odds were slim, but if they failed, Earth would fall. Elena's team, the brave crew of the Erebus, Earth's last stealth battleship, would infiltrate the Empire's fleet and plant the charges needed to destroy the Oblivion. This mission was a one-way ticket for most, as the Empire's drones, guided by powerful AI, patrolled the area in relentless waves, and no one was certain whether they could make it past them. The crew prepared for the impossible, knowing that the fate of the entire planet rested on their shoulders. Inside the Erebus, the crew worked quickly, preparing for the final assault. They had one shot, one chance to plant the charges and get out before the entire fleet turned their attention to them. As Elena surveyed the battlefield on the holographic screen, her mind raced through the countless scenarios that could unfold. Success meant saving humanity, failure meant annihilation. The weight of responsibility pressed on her, but she pushed it aside, focusing on the mission at hand. The moment of truth arrived. Elena gave the order, and the Erebus surged forward, engaging its cloaking technology to remain hidden from the Empire's radar. They slipped between the Imperial warships, closing in on the Oblivion. But just as hope seemed within reach, the enemy's drones appeared, faster than expected, locking onto their ship. They had been detected. Captain Carter shouted orders as the crew fought to maintain control of the ship. The Erebus entered a high-speed evasive maneuver, weaving through the vast fleet of the Empire's ships, while the drones closed in. The ship shook violently as enemy fire rocked its hull, and the crew struggled to maintain balance. Elena's team had made it this far, but the real fight was just beginning. The Erebus's weapon systems activated, and the stealth ship fought back, taking down drone after drone. But the Empire's forces were relentless. As the Erebus moved in closer to the Oblivion, enemy warships surrounded them, closing in for the kill. Close-quarters combat was the only option left. Elena's crew engaged the enemy in a brutal battle that raged across the void of space, exchanging fire with the Empire's massive warships. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the battle was not limited to space. Ground forces were waging a fierce fight against the Empire's drones and ground troops in the cities. The orbital bombardments from space lit up the night sky, as explosions erupted high above, raining down destruction. On the ground, soldiers fought in the trenches, the sound of gunfire and explosions filling the air as they desperately defended their cities from the Empire's advance. In this chaos, Captain Elena Carter and her team pressed on toward their goal, the Oblivion. The space battle grew more intense by the minute. The crew of the Erebus moved through the enemy's lines, firing on Imperial warships and drones, while dodging incoming attacks. Elena, along with her trusted officers, led the charge, directing the crew with precision as they cut through the enemy's ranks. They had a singular purpose: destroy the Oblivion at all costs. But as they neared the flagship, disaster struck. A missile from an Imperial ship collided with the Erebus, causing a massive explosion. The ship lurched violently, and alarms blared as the crew fought to keep it under control. Sergeant Rafe, Elena's close friend and a key member of the team, was injured in the blast. His condition worsened quickly, and it became clear that he wouldn't survive. Rafe, who had been with Elena through countless battles, had always been her rock. Losing him was a devastating blow to her morale, and it shattered the crew's resolve for a moment. Elena, with tears in her eyes, ordered the crew to focus on the mission. They couldn't afford to mourn now. Rafe had given everything for Earth's survival, and they would honor his sacrifice by completing the mission. His death galvanized the crew. They fought harder, with newfound determination. Rafe's memory burned in their hearts as they continued to battle their way through the enemy forces. Finally, Elena and her team reached the Oblivion. They planted the charges and prepared to escape, but the enemy was closing in fast. The Erebus was damaged and nearly out of power. Elena knew they wouldn't make it out without facing a full Imperial assault. She gave the order for the crew to evacuate as the charges were set to detonate. With time running out, Elena and her team made one last desperate dash to their escape pods. The Oblivion was on the brink of destruction, and the final countdown had begun. The scene was chaos, with explosions rocking the battlefield. As Elena and her crew made their way to safety, the Erebus fired one final shot at the Empire's ships, buying them the time they needed to escape. The Oblivion erupted in a massive explosion, sending shockwaves through the surrounding ships and forcing the Empire's fleet to retreat. It was a victory, but at a tremendous cost. Captain Elena Carter and her team had managed to destroy the heart of the Empire's fleet, but they had lost comrades along the way. Sergeant Rafe's death was a personal loss that weighed heavily on Elena's heart, but it was also a symbol of the sacrifices humanity was willing to make to secure their future. As the survivors drifted in space, recovering from the battle, they knew the war was far from over. But they had struck a decisive blow, and humanity's last stand had given them a fighting chance. They would fight for Earth, for their fallen comrades, and for the future of their species. After the destruction of the Oblivion, Earth had won a hard-fought battle, but the fight was far from over. Elena and her team had barely escaped with their lives, and as they regrouped, the true scale of the Galactic Empire's threat began to unfold. What they thought was just a mission to protect Earth from conquest was, in fact, much darker. Elena and her crew were about to discover the terrifying truth behind the Empire's intentions, and it would send shockwaves through their already fragile morale. As they dug deeper into the intelligence they had gathered from the Oblivion, the crew made a chilling discovery. The Empire's true goal wasn't just to conquer humanity, it was to exterminate them completely. The quantum decimator, a massive and terrifying weapon, was locked onto Earth, capable of destroying the entire planet with a single strike. This wasn't just a military campaign for the Empire, it was an act of genocide. Humanity's extinction was their goal, and Earth had only days before the weapon would be fired. The news hit Elena and her team like a wave of cold water. They had been fighting to protect their home, but now they realized the magnitude of what they were up against. The Empire wasn't just another alien force, they were a cold, calculating machine driven by a relentless desire to wipe out all of humanity. It was a truth that shook them to their core, but it also gave them a renewed sense of purpose. They couldn't let Earth fall. They had to fight for survival, not just for themselves, but for every person back home. The only hope for Earth's survival lay in Project Aegis, a mysterious and highly classified defense system designed as a last resort. Its full capabilities were unknown, but it was humanity's only chance to disable the quantum decimator and stop the Empire's annihilation plans. But getting their hands on it would be no easy task. The project was locked away deep within the heart of the Empire's stronghold, heavily guarded and nearly impossible to infiltrate. Elena and her crew knew the risks, but there was no other choice. If they didn't act quickly, Earth would be gone. Captain Elena Carter and her team set out on a dangerous mission to steal Project Aegis. The operation was risky, and every step of the way, the Empire's forces were closing in on them. The mission required absolute precision, as they would have to infiltrate one of the Empire's most secure facilities, hidden deep within an uncharted sector of space. Failure meant not only the loss of their lives but also the doom of Earth. But Elena and her team had faced impossible odds before, and they weren't about to back down now. As they made their way to the Empire's stronghold, they faced countless challenges. The Empire's drones and advanced AI were everywhere, monitoring their every move. The team had to rely on their stealth technology and quick thinking to stay undetected. There were moments when it seemed like the entire mission would fall apart. Every wrong move could cost them their lives. Yet, with every passing minute, the tension grew as they neared their target. Along the way, Elena began to feel the weight of her role as leader. She had led her crew through countless battles, but each loss, each sacrifice, was starting to take its toll on her. The emotional burden of her position weighed heavily on her shoulders. Sergeant Rafe's death still haunted her, and with each passing day, the memories of her fallen comrades became harder to bear. She could feel the pressure building as the mission grew more dangerous. Elena was struggling to keep her composure, but deep down, she feared that she might break under the strain. The sacrifices of her crew, their lives, their hopes, were beginning to chip away at her strength. Yet, despite her inner turmoil, Elena knew she had no choice but to keep going. The fate of Earth rested on her ability to lead her crew through this final challenge. Project Aegis was their last hope, and she couldn't afford to let her emotions take over. As they entered the heart of the Empire's stronghold, Elena steeled herself, knowing that the mission was bigger than any one person. It was about saving humanity, about honoring the sacrifices of those who had already given everything. Inside the Empire's stronghold, the team faced intense opposition. The guards were elite, their technology superior, and the security systems were nearly impossible to bypass. But Elena and her team were determined. They moved swiftly and silently, taking down enemies in their path and using every tool at their disposal to disable the security systems. With each success, their hope grew, but so did the danger. The longer they stayed, the more likely it was that the Empire would discover their presence. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of tension and close calls, Elena and her crew found Project Aegis. It was locked away in a high-tech vault, surrounded by layers of security and advanced AI defenses. But the team had prepared for this moment. Using the intelligence they had gathered, they bypassed the systems one by one, unlocking the vault and retrieving the device that could change the course of the war. Project Aegis was more than just a weapon, it was the key to shutting down the quantum decimator and stopping the Empire's plan for humanity's extinction. With Project Aegis in their possession, Elena and her team began their escape. But the Empire's forces were closing in fast. The stronghold was on high alert, and there was no time to waste. The team fought their way through enemy forces, taking down drones and soldiers as they made their way to the exit. Every step felt like a race against time. Elena's heart pounded in her chest as they neared the escape route. It was now or never. As they finally made their way to safety, Elena took one last look at the facility. The mission was a success, but the battle was far from over. They had the weapon they needed to stop the quantum decimator, but the Empire would stop at nothing to destroy them. Elena knew the stakes had just gotten higher. The final showdown was coming, and Earth's survival depended on their ability to use Project Aegis to stop the Empire's weapon before it was too late. But despite the weight of the mission, despite the emotional toll it had taken on her, Elena knew there was no turning back. For the sake of the human race, she had to keep moving forward, driven by the memory of her fallen comrades and the hope that their sacrifices had not been in vain. The countdown to Earth's destruction had begun. The quantum decimator, a weapon capable of eradicating the entire planet in a single blow, was fully powered and aimed at Earth. Every second that passed brought humanity closer to annihilation. The fate of billions rested on the shoulders of a few brave individuals, and Earth's only hope lay in Project Aegis, a device that could destroy the Empire's fleets and disable the quantum decimator. But there was a catch: the device was a one-shot weapon, and deploying it would require an immense sacrifice. For the team, it was clear that this was a mission they might never return from. The weight of this truth hung heavily over Elena as she prepared for the final confrontation with the Empire. She knew the risks, but the reality of what was at stake, the survival of the entire human race, was enough to push her forward. The team had already lost so much, and they could not afford to back down now. Captain Elena Carter, though broken by the emotional toll of the war, remained resolute. She had seen her crew members die, had lost Sergeant Rafe, and felt the crushing weight of their sacrifices. But she had always been a fighter, and she would fight until the very end for Earth's survival. With her heart heavy but determined, she gathered her team for one final mission. They would infiltrate the Empire's stronghold one last time to deploy Project Aegis, the only hope to stop the impending destruction of Earth. This mission would be their last, but it was the only chance humanity had. The atmosphere was tense as Elena and her team prepared for their final assault. The Empire's forces were concentrated on Earth's orbit, preparing to fire the quantum decimator. Time was running out. Their journey had brought them through epic battles, near-death encounters, and the loss of many brave soldiers. Now, they had no choice but to fight for humanity's survival. Their objective was simple: get to the quantum decimator before it fired, and deploy Project Aegis to disable the weapon and destroy the enemy fleet. As the team made their way through the Empire's defenses, the weight of the mission became more real. Elena's mind raced with thoughts of her fallen comrades. Rafe, Bonner, and many others had sacrificed their lives so that they could get to this moment. It was a sobering thought, but it also drove her forward. She couldn't fail them. She couldn't fail Earth. The journey through the Empire's stronghold was filled with intense combat. The Imperial forces fought back with everything they had, deploying drones, robotic soldiers, and even AI-driven war machines to stop them. But Elena and her crew were relentless. Every step brought them closer to the heart of the Empire's operations, and with every battle they fought, their resolve grew stronger. They had come so far, and now there was no turning back. Finally, they reached the control center, where the quantum decimator loomed, ready to obliterate Earth. The Empire's AI controlling the weapon was relentless, and every second counted. Elena knew what needed to be done. Project Aegis was ready to be activated, but it required a significant sacrifice. She would have to stay behind and ensure the device's success, preventing any chance of failure. As she prepared to trigger Project Aegis, Elena gave her final orders to her team. "You all go back," she said with determination. "I'll make sure this works." Her voice, though steady, was filled with the emotional weight of knowing she might never see her team again. The crew protested, but Elena knew this was the only way to guarantee humanity's survival. The mission had always been about sacrifice, and now it was her turn. With a heavy heart, Elena triggered Project Aegis. The device activated, and the explosion that followed was unlike anything Earth had ever experienced. Energy waves rippled through space, and the Empire's fleet began to disintegrate under the power of the blast. Orbital bombardments rained down on the remaining Imperial ships, and the quantum decimator's power was completely shut down, leaving the Empire's forces disoriented and in retreat. Elena's sacrifice had worked, the Empire was defeated, and Earth was saved. But the cost of this victory was unimaginable. As the explosion ripped through the facility, Elena and her team were caught in the blast. The shockwave sent them flying, and the battle had come to an end. The team managed to escape, but Elena did not survive. She had given everything for her crew, for humanity, and in doing so, she had secured their future. But in the process, she had lost her life. Her death was a crushing blow to her crew. They had all fought beside her through the darkest moments of the war, and her leadership had been their guiding light. Losing her was more than just the loss of a captain, it was the loss of their moral compass. Elena had been the glue that held them together, and now she was gone. As they escaped the battle zone, they couldn't help but feel the weight of her sacrifice. The audience, too, felt the emotional impact of Elena's death. Throughout the story, they had come to know her as a strong, brave leader, and to see her fall was a heart-wrenching moment. Her sacrifice highlighted the cost of survival and the true meaning of heroism. The victory over the Empire was bittersweet. Humanity had won, but it had come at a heavy price. The final moments were filled with grief, but also with hope. The surviving members of Elena's team knew that they had to carry on her legacy. Her bravery, her leadership, and her sacrifice would live on in their hearts and in the survival of Earth. The war was over, but the journey was far from finished. Humanity had survived, and the future was theirs to rebuild. But it was all thanks to Elena's sacrifice, a hero who gave everything for the survival of her people. As Earth began to heal from the devastation of the war, the memory of those who had fallen, especially Elena, would never fade. Their sacrifices were the foundation upon which the future of humanity would be built. And though the battle was over, the legacy of those who had given their lives for the survival of Earth would remain in the hearts of every human being for generations to come. The final echoes of battle slowly faded as Earth looked out into the remnants of the war. The Empire's fleet had been shattered, and the quantum decimator was no more. The massive, planet-destroying weapon that had once hovered above Earth, poised to end humanity, was now nothing but a smoldering heap of debris. The surviving Imperial forces had retreated, leaving Earth with a fragile victory. But as the dust settled, the true cost of this battle became painfully clear. Cities were in ruins, their skyscrapers shattered and streets filled with the remnants of destruction. The war had left a scar on the planet that would take generations to heal. Millions of people were dead, their lives claimed by the relentless attack of the Empire. The fighting had been fierce, and while the survivors celebrated the defeat of their enemies, the weight of their losses hung heavy in the air. Families had been torn apart, and entire communities lay in ruin. There was no denying the price humanity had paid for their survival. The Terran Defense Alliance was the first step in Earth's recovery. Nations that had once fought among themselves now stood united, their differences forgotten in the face of a common enemy. The alliance was formed not only to defend Earth but to prepare for the inevitable return of the Empire. The Galactic Empire had retreated for now, but they would be back. Earth knew it. The Empire had tasted defeat, and they would not let it go easily. In the midst of this uncertainty, Earth's leaders vowed to rebuild, to ensure that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. The people who had survived the war were determined to honor the sacrifices of their fallen comrades. General Bonner, Sergeant Rafe, Captain Elena Carter, and so many others had given their lives to protect Earth's future. Their sacrifices had not been in vain, but the cost of their victory weighed heavily on the survivors. Elena's legacy lived on in the hearts of every human being who had fought for the survival of their species. She had been more than just a captain, she had been a symbol of hope, strength, and leadership. Her bravery in the face of impossible odds had inspired countless others to keep fighting. Even in death, Elena's spirit lived on in the world she had saved. The Terran Defense Alliance stood as a testament to her courage and sacrifice. The people of Earth knew that, without Elena, their survival would have been impossible. But the battle was far from over. The survivors knew that the Empire's return was only a matter of time. Earth had only won the first round of a war that would likely last for generations. The Terran Defense Alliance began to make plans to fortify Earth's defenses, developing new technologies and training soldiers to face the coming storm. They were determined not to let the Empire gain a foothold on Earth again. But even as they worked to prepare for the future, they knew that the cost of the war had changed them forever. The world they were rebuilding would be shaped by the horrors they had endured. In the final scenes of the story, the survivors began to rebuild the cities, lifting the broken pieces of their world and working together to restore what had been lost. The streets that had once been filled with fear and despair were now filled with hope. The survivors moved with purpose, knowing that they were laying the foundation for a new Earth, a world where their children could grow up free from the shadow of the Empire. The war had been brutal, and the scars would take time to heal, but humanity had survived. The final scene shows a city skyline, the sun rising over the horizon, casting light on the remains of the war. The camera zooms in on a small group of survivors standing together, their faces grim but resolute. They looked out over the city, knowing that they had won, but at a terrible cost. There were no cheers of victory, no grand celebrations. Instead, there was quiet reflection, a somber acknowledgement of the sacrifices that had been made. But in that silence, there was hope. Earth had been the underdog in this battle. They had faced an enemy that seemed invincible, a force that had nearly wiped out their entire species. And yet, against all odds, they had fought back. They had shown the Empire that humanity would never be crushed, that they would always find a way to survive. The story ends with a powerful, hopeful message: Earth may have been the underdog in this battle, but they would never again run from their enemies. The next time the Empire came, they would be ready. The Terran Defense Alliance would be stronger, smarter, and more united than ever before. Humanity had learned the cost of survival, and they would not take it for granted. They had earned their future, and they would defend it with everything they had. As the camera fades to black, the message is clear. Earth's fight was far from over, but it was a fight they were ready to face. With the legacy of their fallen heroes to guide them, humanity would rise again, stronger than ever. And no matter what the future held, they would never again be the underdog. Earth had shown the galaxy what they were capable of, and they would fight until the end to protect their home.